Welcome to tonight's meeting. We're glad that you're all here. This is the West 38th Avenue Corridor Study, public meeting number 1. We're going to run through the presentation and there'll be an opportunity for you to put your questions in the Q&A. There is a chat where you can leave comments, but we'll try and get to as many questions as we possibly can this evening. There are a lot of you on the call. If we can't get to everything, we'll create an FAQ for you. But without further ado, I'm going to kick off this meeting. Before we do that, though, we do have an interpreter. There is a globe at the bottom of your screen. As soon as we switch our interpreter over to the interpreter channel, you'll be able to access Spanish. And I'm going to have our interpreter introduce himself really quickly.
Okay, hello, good evening, buenas noches. Mi nombre es Philip, soy intérprete de español. Aquí vamos a ofrecer la interpretación en español con este icon aquí y hagas un clic en el globo cuando dice interpretación. En un momento puedes hacer un clic ahí para recibir la interpretación en español.
We'll turn it over to Phoebe.
Thank you, Nora. Next slide, please. Great. So welcome, everyone. As Nora mentioned, this is the first public meeting for the West 38th Avenue Corridor Study. I'd like to introduce our project team. So my name is Phoebe Fuchs. As I mentioned, I will be the project manager on the city side. So I'm a senior city planner at the Denver Department of Transportation and Infrastructure, also known as DOTI. And I'm joined tonight by a really stellar consultant team that will be supporting this project. So as we move through the presentation, you'll see a few different folks on our team speaking, and I'll have them introduce themselves as they start speaking. I do want to take a second to welcome our Councilwoman Sandoval to this meeting. Councilwoman, if you want to say hello, provide any thoughts you have for the opening of the project before we dive into our intro.
Thank you so much. I would start my video, but it says that panelists, I can't stop my video, so you all just have to listen to my voice. I have the honor and pleasure of serving as your city councilwoman, Councilwoman Amanda Sandoval, and this project is near and dear to my heart. I first heard about a 38th Avenue corridor study recommendation in 2012 when I started working for former Councilwoman Judy Montero. And with since working in the city since 2012, I know 38th Avenue is the spine. I think of it as the spine of Northwest Denver. And so I was able to get money in the 2024 budget for a corridor study, which would incorporate all of Northwest Denver. So from Inca to Sheridan, which I thought there was money already in the budget from Inca to federal. And now it's encompasses the entire corridor. So thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you for the project team. I look forward to learning. And I have one request to community. If 5 of you tell 5 of your friends, or if all of you tell 5 of your friends about the corridor study and receive updates, by the end of the community process, we will have great, robust outreach. So we are relying on you to tell the neighborhood and to tell people at your schools where you can go, where your kids go, work, coffee shops. So please tell everyone to sign up for the 38th Avenue corridor update emails. And I'll put that in the chat so that you all can see that. And then by the end of the project, we can say, not everyone in the north side will have known about this project. So thank you all.
Thanks so much. Next slide, please. All right. So overview of this project. We are going to be studying as Councilman Sandoval mentioned, all of West 38th Avenue in Northwest Denver, from Sheridan to all the way down to Inca, and then including the notorious underpass to the Fox Street intersection. So all in all, a 3-mile study area. Next slide, please. Quick overview of the project timeline. So right now we are in this first purple phase of the project on the left here. Our project team is collecting a lot of data, reading previous plans to understand the corridor a little bit better, and reviewing a lot of the previous public feedback that we have already heard about West 38th Avenue, which is quite a lot. So just want to make sure everyone knows we have already captured quite a lot of feedback and comments from everyone to work off of. Following that, we'll jump into a second phase where we start analyzing different alternatives for the corridor, start taking some of those issues that we've heard about and translate those into opportunities and solutions. We'll look at some different cross sections of the corridor and really start to put together that vision alongside you all of what the future of the corridor will look like. Step 3, designing some near-term recommendations for the corridor. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. And then finally, we will be putting everything all together into a final plan for the corridor to achieve that vision. And as we transition into step 4, we'll be collaborating again with the community for another outreach phase at that point in time. And then after that, once this study is complete, we'll be ready to start implementing some of the solutions that come out of this project from 2025 onward. Next slide, please. So just want to take a second to touch on our citywide DOTI values that were established through our recent citywide strategic transportation plan, Denver Moves Everyone. These are the values that we strive to achieve through every single one of our planning projects. And those are related to mobility, safety, sustainability, community, and quality. So you'll see those as a theme throughout this presentation and throughout the project. So specific to this corridor, we have identified a few initial project priorities, and this is what we've used to kind of help set up the project team that we have working on this and set up all the work that we're going to be doing over the next year. So a big project priority is going to be establishing a really clear community vision for this project. Like I mentioned, there have been past projects that have touched on West 38th Avenue, maybe identified it for, hey, this needs further study, this needs this is a priority one way or another. And so we really want to bring together all those past recommendations and feedback into something that the whole community has a voice in contributing to that vision. So a second big priority is improving safety. We know that West 38th Avenue experiences very high numbers of automobile crashes, and we want to make sure that West 38th Avenue feels safe for everyone, no matter whether you're driving, walking on the corridor, biking across it, no matter what. We know that's a really important and immediate priority. And so we'll be looking for opportunities to implement any near-term safety treatments that we can throughout the course of the project. A third priority is enhancing public transit. So we'll talk a little bit more about this later on in the presentation, but West 38th Avenue was identified for future bus rapid transit, which is really exciting. And so big framework that we're working with this project is just understanding the fact that we have the ability to really rethink and reimagine the corridor in a totally different way through really enhanced transit service that is much better than what's out there today. Third priority is, of course, promoting biking, walking, and rolling. Right now, the corridor predominantly serves automobile traffic. There's just a lot of traffic out there, really narrow sidewalks, and we definitely want to balance that a lot more and not make it feel like there's hardly any room for pedestrians and just way too much space for vehicles. And then finally, West 38th Avenue has also been identified as a green infrastructure priority corridor. We know that it's a very hot street. There's not a lot of street trees, and it experiences some urban heat island effect. We also have some stormwater, drainage, and water quality challenges that have been previously identified in this corridor. So it will also be a priority of this project to do a ton of work to analyze, when and where those green infrastructure opportunities present themselves and what we can do about that. And throughout all of these project priorities, like I mentioned, we'll not only be looking for that future vision, but also thinking about what can we kind of accomplish in the near term with some quicker interventions. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to the consultant team to talk about the work that they've done so far to understand these priorities a little bit better. So I'll hand it off to Jason.
Great. Thanks, Phoebe. Hi, everybody. My name is Jason Miller. I'm with Fair & Pierce Transportation Consultants based here in Denver. And I am the project manager on the consultant side for the West 38th Avenue corridor study. Thanks for being with us tonight. So I wanted to go through one by one the various priority areas that Phoebe touched on and talk a little bit about what we're learning as we are in the initial analysis part of our study here. And just want to go through the by mode, the vision here. So priority one is establishing a clear community vision. We know that there's been a lot of previous planning in various parts of the corridor, and we want to recognize and respect that. So starting with transit, we know that through the Denver Moves Transit plan, it has been identified, as Phoebe mentioned, West 38th as a bus rapid transit corridor with dedicated bus lanes and signals, enhanced bus stops and stations, and a 15-minute all-day frequency. For pedestrians, those walking and rolling through Blueprint Denver, this corridor is identified as a Main Street arterial. And really what that means is, it needs to be a connected, comfortable, safe, accessible environment for walking and rolling with wide sidewalks, amenity zones, and improved crosswalks and promotion of safety elements. Connected bikeways, we've seen a lot of work through various plans that I'll talk about here in a moment that have looked at both north-south connections across 38 and as well as how to make east-west connections via bike either along 38th or parallel to 38th. We know that there's a need in all directions really to make those better connections, provide better amenities for biking, including bike parking at transit stops. And then overall, there's some additional study needed when it comes to bicycling along or adjacent to 38th. When it comes to green priority through Denver Moves Everyone, this corridor has been identified as a priority for green infrastructure through street trees and landscaping, stormwater and water quality improvements, and tactics to address the urban heat island effect. We also understand that through the recent Near Northwest Area Plan, celebration of history and culture and incorporation of that in anything we do is very important, blending that residential and commercial that exists in the corridor, respecting that, and trying to foster more community gathering places throughout our effort. Next slide. So moving on to priority two and talking about safety. Unfortunately, this corridor is part of the high injury network, which basically means it is a street within the city and county of Denver that has higher than average crashes. So through our initial analysis, we have looked at 5 years worth of crash data from September of 2018 through August of 2023. Through that analysis, we found that sadly, there have been 6 fatal crashes, 23 severe crashes, and 26 pedestrian-involved crashes. You can see through this map the relative amount of crashes by the size of the yellow bubbles and We also have indicated those intersections and areas where there have been pedestrian and bicycle crashes, including several fatal bike and ped crashes along the corridor. Next slide. In addition, and informed by not only that crash analysis, but what we're hearing from the community through previous planning efforts and ongoing dialogue with the community, we know that Sheridan, Lowell, Irving, Federal, and the Alcott and Bryant area are intersections of concern. We do have, as part of our project, a full road safety audit that will be conducted later this month, where we will be out in the field looking at peak traffic times at all of the intersections along the corridor, but paying particular attention to these intersections that we've been hearing about, as well as the intersections you saw on the crash map on the previous map. And that will really inform the near-term and long-term improvements that we want to see within the corridor when it comes to safety. Next slide. So some of the things, key takeaways from that crash analysis: rear end crashes were 29% of all crashes, with 2 of those being severe, but T-bone crashes caused 10 of the fatal severe injury crashes. Pedestrians were involved with 26, 13 of which, or half, were caused by left turning vehicles, and drugs or alcohol were a factor in 31 crashes. So some interventions we might consider, especially knowing those left-hand turn crashes, protected left-hand turns, pedestrian protection, all of the interventions we might consider will be informed by the data and what we learn in our field audit later this month. Next slide. So moving on to priority 3, enhancing public transit. There is transit in the corridor today. Route 38 is a long east-west route going from Central Park Station on the east out to into Wheat Ridge to the west, and is relatively concentrated ridership around Sheridan and Federal. Federal with about 100 in each direction per day average boardings, and Sheridan with about 70 average boardings per day in each direction. But you see ridership throughout the corridor indicated by the blue dots. The corridor is also served or crossed by several other routes in addition to the Route 38, including Route 19, 31, 44, 51, and 52. And not far away, you have the B line and G line commuter rail. So as we move ahead, we want to understand not only how much ridership exists today, but how much ridership could exist and with improvement, and what the opportunities might exist to improve that with better service and better amenities for transit. Next slide. And we do know that the Route 38 running along 38th Avenue does have some challenges today with on-time performance, one of the factors that we typically look at, and really does show that, and just to give a point of reference, we typically like to see an on-time percentage of 80% or higher. And you can see that much of the time that's not being achieved. We define late as being greater than 4 minutes. And you see that that is happening. And we go to the next slide. It pulls out that really Saturdays and the PM peak are where buses are consistently running late. But we do see challenges with on-time performance throughout the corridor, which really cuts against, trying to build ridership, and is something that certainly Bus Rapid Transit could help address through more consistent travel time via transit. Next slide. Diving into what is Bus Rapid Transit, BRT or Bus Rapid Transit, really is kind of, buses operating as rail. So you may have heard of the East Colfax project. Center Running, that rendering on the left, is the project that's being planned there for East Colfax. So buses have their own dedicated lanes. There's rail style stations that have very easy boarding on and off. Typically, ticketing is off board so that buses can move quickly along the corridor. There's prioritization of buses across intersections through signal timing and prioritization of how the buses travel. And those there can be incorporated within that bike lanes. You see on the right there from a BRT program in Maryland. You can incorporate that, and pedestrian movement across is critical as well, since all of the stops are typically paired, and you have buses traveling in each direction with consistent travel times and that high quality, high frequency service of 15 minutes. Next slide. So priority 4, promoting walking, biking, and rolling. Lots of different planning efforts here within the past almost 15 years, going back to 2011, where Denver Moves Bikes recommended neighborhood bikeways on West 35th and 41st, and moving on to the 2015 plan, added recommendation for further study of bike facilities along West 38th. 2017 saw the first ever neighborhood bikeway installed on West 35th, and through the Northwest Community Transportation Network program, there's been an evaluation of connected bikeways and additional neighborhood bikeways installed. And the most recent Northwest area plan looked at the possibility of having parallel corridors for bike travel on 37th and 39th, as opposed to having bicycles on 38th. So in general, this one, there's more varied planning efforts previous, and something we'll need to reconcile as we move ahead with our planning efforts and consider. When we look at the infrastructure that exists today, we know there's significant issues with sidewalk quality, width, consistency, and maintenance. We do know that it's hard to get across the corridor. There are limited crossings for people biking, walking, and rolling, and something we'll keep in mind as we move ahead and try and address those issues in our near-term and long-term recommendations. Next slide. So priority 5, greening the corridor. That really comes down to a couple different things. How we might be able to improve drainage, contributing to flooding during large storm events. Not necessarily that greening the corridor will take care of all of those issues, but I think there are some opportunities for that, and mitigating those heat island effects with a better tree canopy and more street trees throughout the corridor. Next slide. And really, it's, green infrastructure is a broad term, but it really talks about using living plants and materials to help manage stormwater, create a better urban environment through some of the tactics you see here that have been used on Brighton Boulevard, 21st and Broadway, and at the Carla Madison Rec Center. This will be a part of our study. It really does come down to available space and appropriate applications within the corridor, but one of our priority areas for sure. And with that, I'll turn it over to Michael.
Thanks, Jason. We do have a polling activity. This is where I see that the chat and the Q&A is already being filled up, and we love that, and we'll get to talk through that in an open discussion here soon. Before we do that, we would love to go into a polling activity. So using either your cell phone, or you can go to menti.com. You will enter the code 92346213. And I'll give people just a few minutes to get logged on to the website, onto the polling activity. The first question is already up there for you to be able to answer. I'll pull that over onto the shared screen here in just a second, but want to give people an opportunity to scan that QR code with their phone, or go to menti.com and enter the code 92346213. As you all can see, the first question is, what community do you live in? And that is the question that we're first wanting to understand. Just who's in the room here? Who do we have on the phone today? Who are we being able to hear from? Who are we not hearing from as well? Looks like we've got a good mix of people coming in from a variety of the nearby communities here. I'll give it just a little bit more.
Michael, can you repeat the Menti link?
Yes, of course. It is menti.com, MENTI.com. And you can use the code 9234-6213. And thank you, Phoebe, for putting that link into the chat there. Give it just a few more moments for people to be able to log on.
There's not a, is there a way to do like a link that actually takes them straight there without having to enter the code?
There is. I might need to exit for just a second here.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. But I can do that, yes.
Thanks. I think that might help some folks.
Yeah.
And while we have a second here, I see a lot of questions coming in the chat and the Q&A as well. We'll definitely do our best to try and answer as many questions as we can. But if you have something you really want to get answered, I would recommend putting it in the Q&A. It's just a little easier for us on the back end to track those as they come in the Q&A, because the chat's moving so quick. Sometimes it's easy for things to get lost. But excited to see that everyone is providing a lot of comments.
That link should work for people. Looks like it did. Thanks for that feedback there. Let me make sure to share my screen back up again here.
Thank you.
Okay. Phoebe, can you confirm that you can see my screen again? Or somebody on our panelists? Okay, sweet. Yep. Awesome. Seeing that we're pretty close to the number of people that we've got in our participants list, you can still join the, we've got the link in the chat, we've got the code right over here, and you'll be able to still join later on here in a second. I am, just in the interest of time, going to move on, but it does look like we've got quite a variety of people in the room here, but maybe less, no people on the call from Globeville and Wheat Ridge. The second question that we have for you is, how do you typically travel on West 38th Avenue? And this is just emphasizing the typically travel. Unfortunately, there is not a multi-select option. So which of these options is the one that you most often travel along West 38th, recognizing that you may be traveling using multiple modes? So those modes are personal vehicle, public transit, walking, bicycling, or ride sharing, or another form of transportation. And as the results are coming right in over here, we've got an overwhelming number of people who typically travel by personal vehicle, and we recognize that. We know that that is the nature and characteristics of the current corridor, of the existing conditions there. But also good to see quite a few people answering that walking and bicycling is the form of travel for them on West 38th Avenue. And I also see some people are answering in the comments as well. That is totally acceptable too. Thank you. Great. We'll go ahead and keep on moving here. Keep forgetting where the next slide button is there. Sorry. This is wanting to understand your perspective on the way that past planning efforts have recommended certain things and what your perspective is on these. So this question will ask you to rank each of these priorities on how important they are to you today. These are all priorities that have been recommended previously, and we're wanting to gauge, how important does this continue to be to you as the community member? So I'll just walk you all through these, and you're able to, it looks like people are getting the hang of it already. But I'll walk you through each of these. So providing reliable, frequent, and convenient and high quality public transit service along West 38th to connect Northwest Denver with all of the surrounding areas. Providing, how do you feel about and how important is it for West 38th to provide safe, comfortable, high quality bike facilities directly on West 38th Avenue? Similarly, how important is it to you for West 38th and for this project to provide safe, comfortable, high quality bike facilities on parallel streets to West 38th Avenue, such as 37th or 39th, as we saw in this previous, in the most recent plan that came out. The following one is widening sidewalks along the corridor for people walking and rolling, as well as amenities such as outdoor seating or bus stop shelters. The next one is calming traffic, specifically some improvements related to reducing vehicle volumes and reducing speeds along West 38th Avenue. The following one is planting street trees and or landscaping to provide shade, improving our water runoff quality, as well as enhancing the urban environment along West 38th Avenue. And another recommendation that has come out from other plans that we'd like for you to rank between not as important and very important is maintaining on-street parking on West 38th Avenue and creating more short-term parking and loading zones. And out of those, it does look like, not necessarily comparing these and saying that these are equal to one another by any means, but looking like fairly supportive, right in that 4-ish range on transit and on safe and comfortable bike facilities on parallel streets, as well as widening sidewalks and calming traffic and planting street trees and emphasizing that the greening of the corridor. Looks like a little less popularity or less important of factors is providing safe and comfortable bike facilities directly on West 38th Avenue. And it looks like the one that was recommended previously in previous plans that is not as important to our crowd tonight is maintaining on-street parking on West 38th Avenue, and as well as creating more short-term parking and loading zones. Going on to the next slide here. Oh, and I apologize, that was not. There we go. This is the correct one. We would like to know, this is going to create a word cloud for you, or for all of us here. What is great about West 38th Avenue today? We would love to hear some positive comments about what's working really well with West 38th Avenue. Looks like a mix of emotions here about West 38th Avenue and what's great about it. And these are coming in much quicker than I'm able to read all of them, of course. But we are seeing local businesses and the people who are here and the historic buildings. They just keep moving a lot. So I'm sorry that I'm not able to get to all of them, just the ones that I'm seeing easily, the connector and local traffic.
Hey, thanks, Michael. Jokes aside, I appreciate everyone's input here, and if anything, this just really underscores the need for us to be investing and studying the corridor at this point in time.
Yes, exactly. And potentially the better way to go about this too is by going to our Next slide here is what can be improved on West 38th Avenue. Really the purpose that we're here for, right, is to understand, what are the current conditions and how can we improve the conditions to better accommodate you and your travel. So really wanting to hear from you, what can be improved on West 38th Avenue? All righty, getting quite a few responses here. We've got safety and transit and sidewalks and traffic calming and trees. We've got all of the priorities that we have identified as the project team and on previous planning efforts that we've heard from you. It's good to hear some consistency over here. Slowing traffic and accessibility. Apologies if I'm repeating some things. It's just once again emphasizing how important many of these factors are. Really great activity to see what you all are thinking in terms of improving all of, this corridor in West 38th. Really, really thankful for all of your contributions tonight into making all of this. And we'll continue talking about all of these improvements and what we can improve here. Great. I'm loving that we're getting so many responses coming in onto this word cloud here. Thank you all. We want to make sure that we are also hearing from everybody. We know that we're hearing from you, right? You're here and we appreciate you being here. And we've got a variety of outreach contact lists that we're referring to and that we are reaching out to. We've reached out to many neighborhood groups and businesses, but we want to know who's still missing here. Who's still missing as part of this conversation? Who do we need to make sure that we are contacting to make sure that their voices are heard in the wanted improvements for West 38th Avenue? Seeing some answers already coming in here. Some low-income users, renters, teenagers, children, busy families, yes. And to emphasize too, we're kicking off our public survey and public meeting later on tonight. So we will share that link with you for you all to share. We will also be we will have some pop-up events. So we will share the details of those as those get scheduled. And we are presenting at different neighborhood organizations. So we are wanting to make sure that that everyone's voice is heard. So this is really why we're wanting to ask who's still missing. And I know that I can scroll on these here. People who can't meet at 5:30. Yes, exactly. Schools and Spanish speakers, children, people who ride RTD regularly, but may not be on the neighborhood association Facebook groups. Yep. And Nora had mentioned this earlier, but we will be compiling all of this. We'll be sharing all of this. So just because I'm not saying it out loud in front of everybody, that doesn't mean that you're not being heard. We will be able to collect all of this here. And we will share this. We'll make all of this public. I'm going to move on to another question for you all is, do you know of any upcoming local community events that we can share this project at? So going back to my previous point, we are going to be out there, out in the environment, out in the public, and we want to make sure that we are getting to the places where people genuinely are at. So wanting to hear from you all, are there any upcoming local community events that we can go out to and that we can share this project with? 2 answers on Sunnyside Music Festival. La Raza, yep. Great. Awesome. Yep. Thank you so much. I'll give it just a little bit here to fill in some more. And I know that our outreach team is eager to see all of these responses and is very thankful for all of these responses that are coming in about where we can attend and how we can continue to share this project. I will leave this up. This will still be open on your end of things as users, but I believe there is no other. Next slide. Yep. So I will leave it up in the background, but I will hop right back into the PowerPoint slide here real quickly. Just make sure that that slide is still open for people to comment. Okay. And we want to make sure that you are aware of what our next steps are here. So as I had mentioned a little bit earlier, we do have that online survey that is now officially open. You can scan that QR code right there, and that will bring you to the survey. That survey link will also be on the project website. That's likely the way that you were able to register for today's meeting. So continue to tune into that project website where updates will be posted, where this material from tonight will be posted. We mentioned this a little bit earlier in terms of our timeline, but wanting to make sure to reiterate this, that we'll meet with you all and we'll meet with the general public again during the summer to gather your input on some design alternatives that we'll come up with based off of the feedback that we hear and as well as our data analysis. And then we will also meet with you a third time in the fall and winter to present the final near and long-term recommendations and really get that community buy-off on the final recommendations there. So go ahead and I can put the link into the chat to that survey here momentarily. I'll do that as soon as I kind of transition over to the next person here. But wanting to just make sure that you are all aware as to what our timeline is in terms of interacting with you all. That being said, I will go ahead and hand it over to Nora, I believe, to facilitate our open discussion.
Thanks, Michael. We have a lot of questions in the chat, a lot of questions in the Q&A. We'll try and get to them as many questions as we can tonight. Bear with us if we don't get to yours. As we said, we'll put together an FAQ, but we're really thrilled with the level of participation and welcome your continued engagement. So I'm going to start with the transit question, which came in early on. And the question is, why are there no bus turnouts on 38th Avenue? It seems crazy to me that a bus needs to interrupt traffic every few blocks.
I can answer that one. So right now, some of the bus stops on West 38th Avenue are in-lane stops where the bus stops in the traffic lane. Some of them, I think, are pullouts, but we know the parking is kind of funky on 38th. It sort of starts and stops. We actually typically prefer, in many of these instances, to have buses stop in lane because it really does help buses stay on time to avoid having to pull in and out of traffic. And typically, this causes pretty minimal delay for traffic. So that's pretty simple answer there for that one. Yeah.
Thank you, Phoebe. All right. We have a number of questions that came in about 38th and Tennyson. So if the panelists could bear with me while I throw you a multi-part question, which is, we believe that Tennyson and 38th is one of the most used crossing points. It's very dangerous. It has narrow sidewalks, congested lanes, high speeds. There's a new building going up at that corner where the line of sight may interrupt visibility. The timing of the pedestrian light and the crossing lights don't seem to be synced up. Not to mention that there's a desire to have this particular intersection act as a gateway to the Tennyson Street shops. Can the panelists address this particular intersection and the improvements that it may need and how one goes about that to develop a better intersection?
Thanks for that feedback. Definitely making sure that we document that, pass it on to our engineers as they work through the safety analysis. Jason, Michael, anything that you all have discovered so far in our safety analysis that might speak to how we might address these concerns that have come up so far, any typical treatments that we would do to address the concerns that were brought up?
Yeah, I mentioned earlier, we will be carrying out our road safety audit here in a couple of weeks, and appreciate the feedback on this intersection. That will give us good framework for really paying attention to what's going on here and starting to come up with some treatments. That said, I think the tactics and treatments we may use in this really are going to come from that analysis. I can't say that we do have anything to date that points us to what a treatment might be. We want to stay open-minded because we do have that upcoming audit effort to really dive in and bring in from our team road safety professionals, of which we have several, but of which Michael and I are not. So I hesitate to say what some of those treatments and tactics might be, but certainly something that we'll be addressing. Michael, anything more to add there?
I think you covered it. Thanks, Jay.
I have one question that I just want to answer really quick because my computer is a little bit frozen, but I feel like it's an important one. And I am trying to type, but it's like really delayed. So someone asked, aside from the previous planning endeavors, how will we be collecting community feedback and how old are these previous plans? I just think this is a really good question. So I want to make sure I answer. Most of the previous plans that we mentioned, like Denver Moves Transit, Denver Moves Bikes, Denver Moves Everyone, have all been done, I think, in approximately like the last 5 years. The Near Northwest Area Plan, which covers half of 38th Avenue, was actually just adopted this year. So all of these are relatively recent. We just want to make sure that we're not going out and reinventing the wheel and ignoring these older plans and asking you all the same questions you've already been asked. But we will be certainly engaging with you all and collecting more feedback specific to 38th. So Michael mentioned the survey that we're launching. Some of you have probably already opened it up and are looking at it now. And then throughout the course of the project, we'll have more community meetings. We'll do some pop-ups, and we'll do at least one other survey as well. And we'll definitely make sure that we bring you along to engage throughout the whole way. And we're not just going to be like completely going off of the previous work. Just wanted to make sure I answered that question because it's a good one.
Yeah, and Phoebe, just I threw in the chat just the whole list of those previous plans. Some of them, there are some ones that go way back, but you're right, most of those are within the past 5 years. So
Thanks, Phoebe and Jason. So we do have a logistics question, which is how many people on the call. We've had we have 103 right now, and we've had as many as 116 folks on the call today. There is a question about connections. Wheatridge has done a 38th Avenue mobility study for the west side. Will that data from that study be useful to this plan as it proceeds?
Yep, certainly. We've connected with our Wheatridge partners and are excited to work with them.
Wonderful. There's a comment indicating that intersections that serve as gateways to schools should get extra attention. How are those access to those kinds of community centers incorporated into a study like this?
Definitely agree with that. We have, through our existing conditions effort, mapped locations of schools. So definitely taking that into consideration with our safety analysis. And it's really great because we have a safe routes to school program here at the City and County of Denver, which means that there is dedicated funding for those types of treatments, safety treatments that are in the vicinity of schools. So definitely taking that into account.
Yeah, and just to add on, I think you could see that, within our near-term recommendations, which, are going to be very tactical and focused on those high need areas, you could see some of those areas in and around schools being prioritized within that Safe Routes to School framework.
We have a question about sidewalks. How will the new sidewalk ordinance interact with pedestrian accessibility on 38th?
That is a great question. New sidewalk ordinance is still in the works of being finalized, my point of view. We're still going to be moving forward with this project. We're going to study the existing conditions on the sidewalks. So we're collecting a lot of data, mapping where do we have existing sidewalks, where do we have inadequate sidewalks, where do we have sidewalk obstacles. This is also something that you all can help us out with when you're dropping comments on our survey map. And so this is helpful and will help Dottie as we stand up that 307 initiated sidewalk program to have really good data to be able to prioritize like where are our biggest sidewalk deficiencies.
Thanks, Phoebe. We do have another BRT question, which is how will the timeline of this BRT line up with the proposed federal BRT on federal?
Yeah, great question. So the federal BRT is currently in the planning, launching into design phase soon, which is exciting. I believe the goal is for the federal BRT to be launched by 2030. So that's in about 6 years. In our citywide Denver Moves Transit plan, 38th Avenue BRT, I think, was identified to launch in the 2030 to 2040 time range. So still quite a few years out. Fortunately, just the way it goes with these really big projects just takes a lot of time to plan and study and design and then get all the money saved up and ready to go. So to shorten that answer, federal BRT coming sooner, 38th Avenue BRT coming a little bit later down the
line. Staying on BRT, would the idea be for the 38 BRT to connect to Union Station or to the A line? The current bus 38 does not do that, and it would be an awfully useful service.
Yeah, I really appreciate that feedback. I saw someone else made that comment too and noticed that myself about the 38th. So it's not something that we had specifically considered, but we'll definitely take that feedback, talk to RTD about it. I saw someone else asked, why isn't RTD here? They're not here tonight, but I work with them every single day. So they're very close partners on this project, and we'll definitely be talking to them about what that future BRT looks like from all angles. Which, could maybe involve changing the routing, but, I don't want to make any promises because they've got like a whole system to figure out there.
Yeah.
But I appreciate the comment because it is important.
Thanks, Phoebe. A question about BRT in terms of the kinds of vehicles that are used. Is it electric?
It could be. I guess I don't know the answer to that one right now. That electric buses, we have quite a few in downtown Denver operating on our 16th Street Mall fleet. Not sure at the time what the fleet would look like in 10 or so years once we are launching with 38th Avenue BRT, but agree it would be awesome for them to be electric.
Yeah. Switching to bikes. Current bikeway design isn't adequate and safe. How will this plan make sure that accessibility by bike in North Denver is protected and connected?
Yes, and I saw something come in. Just want to clarify. BRT stands for Bus Rapid Transit. I apologize, shouldn't be using those acronyms, but Bus Rapid Transit, just think of it as a really fancy type of bus service that emulates rail service. Okay, bike question. Sorry, Nora, can you repeat the question?
The question is, current bikeway design isn't adequate and safe. how will this plan make sure that accessibility by bike in North Denver is protected and connected?
Gotcha. So right now we don't have any bike facilities on West 38th Avenue. So totally agree that biking on there certainly does not feel safe, and I probably wouldn't do it myself. If we were to implement some type of bike facility on 38th, we will work with you all to figure out what does high quality and safe and comfortable mean to you all in the community, and then we'll also be applying our bikeway design manual standards. So you might notice that like Denver has made all kinds of bike lanes over the last 20 years, all the way from like something stamped on the street with nothing else to like our brand new like Broadway bike lane, which is like very fancy, like state of the art. We're going to be following our most recent design guidance, which will ensure that the bike facilities are as safe and comfortable as they can be. On West 38th, that's probably going to be something that requires a lot of protection and a lot of separation from traffic. It's definitely not going to be a share on the street. It'll be something that works for everybody.
Just a quick note, I understand people are raising their hands. We would love to have you put your questions in the Q&A so that we capture them all. It makes it easier for us to put together a comprehensive FAQ. We do have a question about speed limits. Speed limits have been lowered in neighborhoods. When will Dottie have all the new speed limit signs up in the city's neighborhoods?
So that one, I put a link in the Q&A to our Vision Zero webpage where they can find that information. I don't know that off the top of my head, so apologies for that.
Yeah. Back to transit. Is there a plan to ensure convenient transfers between the 38th Avenue BRT and light rail or even heavy rail? There are currently no connections.
Yeah, I think that one we kind of answered with that other question about connecting to Union Station.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. We have let's see. There's a lot of chatter about bike lanes on 38th. I agree that this individual says, I agree, it's hard to imagine bikes on 38th. Curious what an actual dedicated bike lane as opposed to a share would look like. There's a lot of comments coming through also indicating I would never ride my bike on 38th. I would use 35th or 41st. So addressing what biking might look like on 38th versus moving off the corridor.
Yeah. So yeah, I really appreciate folks for bringing this up because it is really hard to imagine biking on 38th right now. We really have the opportunity here to reimagine the whole street. So something that functions a lot differently than it does now. That is going to involve making changes, maybe something like putting the bike lane above the curb, like at the sidewalk level. So it's almost like separated vertically. What we're going to be studying through the course of this project is like, is that even feasible? Is there even enough room to do all of this? And is this something that's going to work for the community? So just want folks to understand, like, the plan wouldn't be to just go out and like stripe a plain bike lane and then ask you all to ride bikes out there. Something else that we have heard through past feedback is that folks would maybe prefer to just see a safe and comfortable bike route on a parallel corridor. We recently installed some neighborhood bikeways on 35th and 41st, I believe, recently, and there could be options to install something similar to those neighborhood bikeways on 37th and 39th as well.
Thanks, Phoebe. The next question is actually about funding. Can you talk a little bit about funding for potential future improvements?
Sure thing. So the current project, this planning study, is being funded through our regular DOTI Department of Transportation program funding. For future improvements to the corridor, anything that's like a near-term treatment that we identify, I think I mentioned that earlier, that would be something that we would also try to we would also try to find opportunities to fund through our regular DOTI budget. For a larger project that rebuilds and reimagines the whole corridor, that is something that we would most likely have to pursue a larger funding opportunity to fulfill. So that could be something like a major grant opportunity, or like a future bond project. That would be something that we would seek a large amount of funding to make sure that we have all the budget we need to get it right.
This is an enforcement question. Is there any appetite from the city to use red light cameras? It seems that 38th Avenue has a significant enforcement problem. I've never seen speeding enforced, and it shows in terms of the safety record.
Yeah, maybe Jason, Michael, do you I might bounce this question to you all to see, with the other like more safety Vision Zero projects that you've focused on in Denver, how we handle recommendations for when and where red light cameras go in. And if you guys aren't sure, I can see if I can find a link to that as well. It's just not my specific area of expertise, so I don't want to give anybody any wrong information. And if we're not sure on the call either, we can follow up as well.
Yeah, let's follow up with the team.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know the efficacy and usage and plans overall, so we can find that out though. I mean, I think when it comes to, I will just add, when it comes to speed management, infrastructure design is more effective overall. Certainly enforcement plays a part, but some of the traffic calming and things that we might consider through the needs and opportunities we identify would likely be more effective.
Certainly, yes. Our first goal would be to reduce speeds through infrastructure, things like narrowing lanes, just trying to encourage folks to drive the speed limit. That would be our first priority before enforcement.
Related to that, Tejon and 38th has one of the highest number of crashes out of all the intersections, but it was left out of priority number 2. Can you address that as an observation?
Yeah, we so that slide where we had like circled those intersections, those were ones that we had already heard about through a lot of emails, a lot of 311 requests, that weren't necessarily popping on like our crash data. So, we interpret that as like, this is a place where a lot of near misses happen, but we're not necessarily seeing in the data that an actual crash is happening here. So that was why we'd called those out. And we can definitely add Tejon to that list as well. So thank you for pointing that out.
Again, related to safety, how do you plan to address the dangers of the many driveways and car entry and exit facilities along West 38th?
Certainly. So the goal as redevelopment occurs is to minimize driveway access points on a street like 38th Avenue. So in our citywide transportation and land use plan, Blueprint Denver, 38th is identified as a main street arterial, which is kind of embedded within our city regulation and development code, that as redevelopment occurs, we'll do our best to minimize those access points on 38th Avenue, on streets like 38th Avenue.
We do have a question about the Fox underpass, 38th Fox Inca underpass, which is really on the furthest reaches of the corridor. But Phoebe, I'm wondering if you could address some of the planning and thinking around that location.
Sure. Really love the great variety of questions that are being asked here. Y'all are really putting me to the test, so I appreciate it. The underpass, was the question related to flooding or just in general?
In general.
Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, some of the things that we've heard and noted through data and through talking to folks at the city is that the underpass experiences some really gnarly flooding. So a couple things. At some point there needs to be a pretty major rebuild of the storm water infrastructure that's underground in that area. I'll spare you all the details, but basically a lot of uh, drainage from the Platte River Valley and Northwest Denver in general, just because of the slopes, collects in that area. And so that's why there's a ton of flooding, and the underground stormwater infrastructure is inadequate and out of date. So at some point, like, that will all need to be fixed. And when we go underground and we tear up the street and the infrastructure to fix stormwater issues, that also presents us with an opportunity when we put everything back together to put it back together right, with things like wider sidewalks, bike connections, all these things that we want. And so it's really great that this planning project is happening at this point in time, so we can collect this kind of feedback from you all. So when we do go and do those other stormwater projects that might not feel like they're related to transit and biking on all this stuff, when we're out there fixing that part of our public right of way and that infrastructure anyway, we can come back in and say, hey, we're also going to do this and make these wide sidewalks because that's what the community told us they wanted through the West 38th Avenue corridor study.
Thanks, Phoebe. So we have a very straightforward question about parking. Will there still be parking on 38th Avenue, street parking on 38th Avenue? How are you going to approach street parking?
Yeah, so as part of the project, we are doing a parking study. So we've gone out and collected a bunch of data on all of the parking restrictions all up and down 38th Avenue, whether that's like 2-hour parking, loading, handicap or ADA spaces. And in a lot of places, there's like signage missing and people aren't sure if they can park there or not. We're collecting all that data. We're inventorying those signs. We're also going out and counting the number of vehicles that are parked at different times of day to understand, like, where do we have more parking demand? And we will use all of that information in addition to feedback and conversations with business owners about loading needs to inform any decisions about parking and where that needs to and how that might change.
This might actually be a question for Jason. Thanks, Phoebe. Will there be any changes to setbacks or property frontages on the corridor? And related, will there be changes to zoning classification and parking minimums for new development? How does community planning and development play into a study like this?
Yeah, through the work that we're doing right now, we're looking at land use and major project planning as it exists today, and within the current framework of planning and land use regulations as they exist. I will say it's not within our scope to really look at the full implications of different zoning tools that might be useful in the corridor as we're focused more on the transportation aspects of the corridor within this study. But certainly, like I mentioned, we're looking at that and informing our work, and the recommendations or the initial possibilities for recommendations. We'll take that into account. But we realize that there's a lot that will change and will evolve over the course between now and when the ultimate vision for the corridor gets built out.
Thanks, Jason. Another question is, how can we ensure that the project stays focused on the stated priorities that we began the presentation with, and not fall victim to prioritizing cars and parking? I'm wondering if you could address community engagement again at this early stage of the study.
No, I love that question because it's about us holding ourselves accountable to our goals. So appreciate the reminder. We'll definitely be checking back in on our goals throughout every project. And maybe as a way to commit to that, next time we come back with to you all with another public meeting and all that, we'll be sure to maybe have a check-in on those project priorities, like with each checkpoint throughout the project, so we can make sure that we're staying on track with those.
Thanks, Phoebe. Just a quick jump back to parking. Somebody asks, will you be counting cars? I know that you've talked about the parking study that is part of this, but maybe you could reiterate how that actually happens.
Oh, yeah, sure thing. So counting cars, we're also counting traffic. I don't know if maybe they were asking about that, but we've done a ton of data collection already for traffic, turning movements, all that good stuff. And then we've also gone out and counted parked cars block by block on 38th Avenue at different times of day. So both like weekend, evening, that kind of high demand, like overnight, middle of the day, trying to be really robust there.
Yep. Thank you, Phoebe. Let's see. We had we've got lots and lots of comments here. We actually have a question about private-public partnerships with local businesses to help with the plan. This person wants to understand how the community can participate alongside normal residents and the city itself.
So Nora, Vanita, would you actually maybe mind answering that question and talking through some of our outreach planning?
Sure. This doesn't actually really address public-private partnerships per se, but we definitely have 3 engagement periods where we will be doing meetings like this. We will be spending time in the community tabling so we can talk to people one-on-one, and doing a digital survey at each of those junctures so people can participate in an asynchronous way, both through a survey tool and through a mapping tool. So if you have 3 minutes or 30 seconds, you can drop a comment on a mapping tool, or if you have a little bit longer, you can spend time on a survey. You can also come and see us and talk to us directly, but all of those engagement periods wrap up and roll up to support the recommendations of a plan like this. Let's see. This is a question about signals. Why are there no protected or automatic walk signals along 38th Avenue?
Great question. I do not know the answer to that.
Yeah, I don't know the history either.
Yeah, but definitely we will, like I mentioned earlier, we're all the feedback that you all are giving us, even the things that haven't been answered as questions, we are like documenting all this, and I'll have a ton of stuff to like bring back to the traffic engineers and ask them about. That's a question that they would know that I don't know the answer to at this time, but we'll definitely be analyzing and doing everything we can to make sure that we get as many like safety issues like that addressed as we possibly can.
As part of your study, considering that this is one of only 3 major access points from Highlands to downtown, how does the capacity of 38th Avenue address the needs of traffic movement during peak times, I'm assuming during commuting periods?
Sure thing. So I think if I'm understanding the question correctly, it's like, this is one of the major connection points, like across the railroad, river, and everything to get into downtown. So definitely a pinch point, definitely experiences some congestion. So any change that we're making to the corridor, there are a lot of decision makers at the city who we need to we have to do a lot of traffic analysis, basically, is what I'm saying. So that's why we've gone out and collected a ton of traffic count data, ton of turning movement count data. So how many people are turning right here? How many people are, just going through? Ton of data like that along every intersection along the corridor. we use that to do traffic modeling, which can help us understand where and how congestion happens. And then obviously going out there and making observations as well. Any changes that we are proposing to make along the corridor, we have to use that traffic analysis to understand if it's going to have any major impacts. And we have to bring that traffic analysis to major decision makers who aren't going to let us get away with doing something that's going to like totally paralyze the traffic network. So if I understood that question correctly, just want you all to be rest assured that, even if changes come to the corridor, there's not going to be anything that causes the entire system to collapse.
We have a question asking, will you be asking people who actually live in Northwest Denver where they would like to get to if they take BRT? There are few shopping opportunities in the area. So we'd like to be able to tell you where we want to go using public transit.
Yeah, well, on our survey, you can definitely indicate that there is, maybe actually, Michael, would you maybe want to like share your screen again and show folks how the survey works, and show them how they could make a comment like that about where they want to go on transit?
Yeah, no problem at all.
Thank you.
Just 1 second to get there. Alrighty, you should be able to see my screen here. This is the link that we had sent in the chat, as well as the QR code that we had on the presentation earlier that I had mentioned. And this is the mapping activity and survey. You've got a quick project overview right over here if you need to revisit that. But right over here, basically, we have this map where you are able to add a variety of types of markers. So you can see that the map is highlighted with our specific study area along West 38th, and you are able to add a marker to any of the locations along here. So for example, if I wanted to add one right, at the intersection of 38th and Federal, the mapping activity will ask me which type of marker or pin that I would like to put onto the map. So if that's related to transit, bike, pedestrian, vehicle, if I think that there's a green opportunity, or if I just have a general comment. So for example, if I were to put, a transit related comment, then this will give me the option of classifying my comment. So if my comment related to transit is also related to safety or access and connectivity, or if it's related to an amenity at, say, a bus stop or something that I'd like to suggest about, improved amenities or something else. And then I can provide my comment right here. And then this is private. This is just to make sure that we're keeping track of people who are able to respond to this. And then I just go ahead and click submit. I won't do that right now to clutter the map, but that is how you'll be able to submit a comment. Again, you can just pick out of any of these categories right here, and you'll be able to, as people fill this in over the course of the next 6 weeks or so, you'll be able to see how other people have responded. So I actually can click into this one. This is somebody who today responded with, a pedestrian comment related to safety, and they said that tons of cars ignore red lights to turn right on red. And then you actually, as a user of the site, can also either downvote or upvote this comment on here, and that lets us know that, yes, I agree with this comment or I disagree with this comment. And then scrolling down a little past there, we also have the survey that we've mentioned that really gets at some improvements, and so you'll see a couple of repetitive questions from tonight, but you'll also be able to express some more detailed thoughts. And I actually encourage you all to go out and fill out this map, fill out the survey. This is the best way for us to be able to document your concerns and to be able to document all of your comments and your suggestions that you have. I'm happy to answer any other questions that come up, and feel free to reach out to our project team if you do have any troubles in accessing this. But does that give a good overview there, Phoebe?
Yes, thank you. And
Of
then
course.
circling back, someone had asked, how can we give input about where we want to go on transit on 38th Avenue? Please go ahead and indicate that when you fill out the survey. There's also like an open-ended answer where you can say that. And if we feel that we need to do a larger poll about that, that's definitely something that we'll consider.
We have a ton of questions. And again, we have time for just a few more this evening, but we promise you that we will aggregate all of these and have answers to questions posted when we post other materials for this meeting after the close of our time together today. But Dolores does ask, are you looking at parallel routes to see how they might be impacted if you make a lot of changes to 38th Avenue?
Yes, that is a great question. And I know that has come up with other BRT projects. So while this project is in the very early stages of all this planning, and we are just focusing on West 38th Avenue right now, any proposed changes that come out of this project, a next step would of course be looking at the parallel corridors, the surrounding neighborhoods, and any impacts that would happen. But we kind of need to figure out like what is everybody's vision first for 38th before we make that next step.
Can you also address the new bikeways in Northwest Denver? And at least this questioner is asking the perception that they are not heavily used. Are you paying attention to the overall use of the newly installed bikeways?
Yeah, so I can't speak directly to that because it's not something that I'm working on personally, but I do know that we are collecting a ton of data right now. We have a bike count program that's collecting counts for numbers of people riding bikes on a lot of the various new bikeways that were installed all throughout Denver. So definitely doing that in the Northwest. Also looking at things like traffic volumes and speeds, like are the different types of treatments that are intended to slow vehicles on streets where we share vehicles with bikes. Are those slowing vehicles down? The folks on our bike ped team are doing a ton of work to evaluate a lot of that right now. So stay tuned, check back on the Northwest Community Transportation Network webpage for more results on that.
We do have another logistics question. Why can't we see all the questions that you're discussing in the Q&A? It's just a feature of the Zoom platform that the Q&A box sends us the questions, and we answer them as they come in or try to aggregate them. So our apologies for a failing of the software.
And as Nora, I think, mentioned at the very beginning, we are going to make a Q&A. So like the big questions that keep coming up, a lot of the frequent themes, we'll make sure that we make a document that we can put a little summary on our webpage. So we make sure that everybody gets a chance to see answers to the frequently asked questions.
Mm-hmm. That's right. I think we're now at the point in the evening where we're getting lots and lots of comments, which are really, really useful, and fewer actual questions. And I think it's probably at this point in the evening where we encourage you. These comments are incredibly valuable and very informative, but we would love to capture them in the survey. The survey is where they will be most usefully aggregated and be part of the record. Phoebe or Jason, I don't know if you want to close us out for the evening.
Well, I just want to say thank you. I'm so impressed with how many folks turned out tonight and asked like the really hard-hitting questions. You really got my brain going. So thank you. And I'm really looking forward to working this community. I'm excited to check out the Sunnyside Music Festival and all the other pop-up events that you all mentioned. I also saw people talking about restaurants in the chat. So I'm an East Denver person, so I'm looking forward to having way more excuses to come out and visit you all in your neighborhoods. Anything you want to close us out with, Jason or Nora?
No, thanks everybody.
Did we let people know how long the survey was going to be open for them to participate in?
Yeah, I don't think we did. We have landed on end of March, so it'll be open through March 31st to give plenty of time.
Yep.
And the last thing I'll say, besides being excited about your restaurants in your neighborhood, I'm also excited for this project. And as a planner with an engineering education, one of my goals is to wrap up this study with being able to start on implementation and not needing to like make another plan or another study before we can actually see changes out there. So that's kind of my personal theme and goal for the project. So hopefully that is something we can follow through with.
Thank you all for being here tonight. We're getting lots of thank yous. Thank you to you.